When we play strategy games, especially those set in scenarios like the Second World War, there's always a factor of ethics involved in a way. It makes you think. If you start Hearts of Iron 4 for the very first time and you select a scenario, the country that's pre-selected is Germany. And this is Germany in the Second World War, so these are the Nazis. The game literally presents you in the tutorial with playing as fascist Italy, and the default starting country is Nazi Germany. Should that make us feel bad? Should we feel bad about playing as the Nazis, an ideology that was a death cult responsible for probably one of the worst, if not the worst, genocidal actions in human history, and causing an untold amount of human suffering and death, misery, and everything else? Should we be playing at this country? Does this make us bad people? I don't think so, no. Just because you are playing as, say, Germany, does not make you sympathetic to the German cause or to the German politics at the time. The game at no point asks you to select a national focus of creating concentration camps. You don't do these parts. You look only at the military strategic and economic simulation of the whole thing, and as such it is somewhat removed. That said, I think historical gaming in general, and World War II historical gaming in particular, presents a unique opportunity, and that is the opportunity to look behind the veil and learn and understand more about the politics, the motivations beyond the military means, and to see how did this happen. Right? So if you see yourself, I am playing as this man who is universally reviled as one of the worst people in history. This means it gives us an opportunity to look and learn and understand what happened. But that's not part of the game, but it provides us with a hook and interest to say, how did we get there? How did we get to the point that Germany decided to invade France, Poland, and kick off that series of events that caused such an untold misery? Which brings us to the alternate history scenario, like the one I'm currently playing, and the Kaiserreich mod, where right now von Schleicher is in power. And if you've been following, this game is way more focused on the politics and the story due to the way that this mod is incorporating these kind of elements and these kind of challenges beyond the military, strategic, logistical, economical focus that you normally have in Hearts of Iron 4. And you could argue that, well, the German Empire at the start of the game was a federalist democracy. And yet we are definitely moving towards, using von Schleicher's path, towards a nationalist, fascist sort of direction. And why did I choose this? Why not play as the Democratic Union? Heck, why not play as the Conservatives and just deal with the more outlandish right-wing parties? But why play as this sort of thing, which brings us into the Wehrmacht and the unified state and total war and all these kind of things? For me, again, this is about opportunity, and I think the interesting part for me on choosing von Schleicher's path here was the opportunity that the game presented in how it portrayed the democratic system as being responsible for events like the Black Monday crisis, which happens due to corruption, which happened due to party politics, and which potentially could have been prevented if the country hadn't been completely paralyzed by parties that were more interested in their own personal little benefits than the overall good of the nation. So for me, it's an interesting story that emerges where we can search our frustration about democracy at times, where we say democracy is terribly inefficient because it's always based on compromise. It's always based on the lowest common denominator. It's always based on what we can all agree on to get away with. But the things where we vehemently disagree on, they tend to cause us not to be as good as we possibly could. And haven't we all at some point said, oh, I wish we had I wish we'd had just a strong leader. I wish we just had somebody who would put an end to all these petty squabbles and just put the country on the right track. Because a strong leader in an authoritarian state, if a good absolute monarch, is going to be achieving potentially more than a compromise-based state system. The problem is, how do you get rid of them again? I'm German, so obviously we tend to search our own history quite a bit, trying to understand how did we get there? How did my grandfather fight in a war that was about race and about extermination and about supremacy? There is this in all of us. There is this tendency to say, I see injustice, I see inefficiency, I see all the problems. Can't just somebody have the power to do something about it? Because the people I vote for and the people who are my elected representatives just don't seem to get there. So there's always that temptation to say, stop this, end all these squabbles, and we're doing it now, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it my way. But that is as understandable as it is also a very dark path, because power corrupts. It always does. And that's why the sharing of power in our current political systems is kind of so important. But what I wanted to sort of explore here was how somebody like von Schleicher, who was not a Nazi, but who was extremely willing to cooperate with the Nazi party, and that effectively cost him and his wife their lives, and who was a straight-up military man as well, could potentially look at the scenario like this, a torn country with external enemies and an existential threat, and saying, no, we have to put an end to this, and we have to unify this country by force, by ending this system. So that's kind of why, that was one reason why I really wanted to follow through with the von Schleicher's path. And obviously I'm playing this the first time, so I'm blind into this. So we'll see how it turns out. And I don't know what kind of events are still coming. I don't know what else is coming down in the focus trees and all these things. But that's sort of why I went there, not because I am convinced that this is how we're supposed to be acting as people and politicians and countries, and that this is necessarily a good thing. No, it isn't necessarily. But I think it was an opportunity to explore the temptation. And that for me was a very interesting storytelling device. That's why we're here. And in general, again, with historical gaming, I think to tie it up to the beginning, I don't think playing as a country or playing as a leader that is not what is currently the considered good or right or correct way of doing things is a good opportunity, because it allows us to learn more about these paths, and it gives us an interest and a hook to research this kind of history. But it can also make us look around and look at other countries that have different systems from the country that we're living in, and say, you know what, maybe there's something good in those systems as well. Maybe we can improve, because no current system is perfect. Maybe we can improve a system by looking at other countries, how they're running their country, what kind of government they have, and see if there's anything good about this that we can take away, and always strive to be better people. And at the end of the day, it's a game still, so we're also just having fun by having little pixel soldiers shoot at each other. And as much as human suffering and the immeasurable suffering of war is something that we should appreciate and that we should also be tempted to learn, the strategic aspect of it is something that just entertains our mind, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. As long as we take the opportunity at times to step a moment back and saying, if this was real, would this be a good thing? And I think the universal answer for all of us is going to be no, because real people die in wars, and many of them, and none of them are necessarily bad people on both sides of the trenches. They're just there because they are there because we have failed, because our leaders have failed. That's why normal people who in any other circumstance would get along well with each other are forced to take up arms and kill each other. So as long as we keep that in mind, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong to play as any country and in any ideology, and just explore these kind of things, and just have some good old-fashioned fun on a strategic game. That's all I have for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll get on with the show.